Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose, and welcome back to this week's podcast episode. I really hope that you are enjoying the format that I've been doing lately of giving some individual episodes, now filtered in with some interviews. I have really enjoyed being able to share some really tangible tools, and I was also really missing interviewing people. So I'm going to go back to that balance, but I don't want to go interviews only because there's so much that I want to share, and there's so much that comes up in my work with clients, comes up in my own life, continued practice of mindfulness and meditation and the ways that we integrate this into our daily routines. And I want to continue to offer you these tools because I do believe, and I wouldn't be in the business I'm in if I didn't believe that growth and change were possible. And one of the fundamental ways that we get there is through the mindset of believing that growth and change is possible. And in that mindset is the ability to be open to looking at things in a new and different way. And this is one of the things that I do so much in my work with my clients is how can I be open to seeing things in a different way from how I've always seen them? Because the way that I'm seeing it may be related to an old story, may be an outdated version of myself. It may be out of fear or anxiety. It may be out of purely habit to get really stuck in the way in which we see things. So I really believe that one of my biggest goals and jobs that I have with my clients is opening them up to the possibility of seeing things in a different way. Now, that's not to say I'm negating what's arising, but I'm challenging the pattern in which we view things. Now, one of the ways that this has come up really, I would say almost consistently, and it's really funny as a therapist, there tends to be themes in my week. There tends to be topics that I swear to you come up almost every session that I have. And I don't know if I'm bringing that awareness to the sessions or if it's simply the patterns that are arising in the field of what's going on in the world right now. Whatever it is. One of the things that I have been talking with almost every single one of my clients about is this idea of holding two truths at the same time. So what does that even mean? Well, you've probably, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know one of my favorite tools I ever learned when I was in couples therapy was from my therapist who taught us the ability to say and instead of but. So even as you go through your daily communication, whether that's out loud to other people, and especially the communication inside your own mind, be mindful of when you say but in the middle of a sentence versus the opportunity for you to say and. So putting this into practice, what does that look like? Maybe it's something as simple as, I was really busy, but I got through my day. I'm really tired, but I was able to get my stuff accomplished anyways. I'm really angry at you, but I'm over it. I'm really exhausted with this pandemic, but there's been a lot of good that has come out of it for me in my life. So in any of those statements that I just said, it impacts the statement and our experience of what is arising if we're actually able to replace the but with the and. So let me see if I can remember the things that I just said. I'm really tired of this pandemic, and there's a lot of good that I've learned about myself through the process. I'm really exhausted, and I got through my work today. I'm really overwhelmed, and I was accomplished in what I got done. So I know I was kind of repeating some things there because I don't remember the first batch of sentences I said. However, it is minor and subtle, but creates a powerful shift when we can allow ourselves to insert and instead of but. Because when we can say and, we are allowing for multiple truths to occur at the very same time. I'm exhausted of this pandemic, and there's been a lot of good that I've learned about myself through this process, and I'm grateful for what I've learned. If you were to use but there, you're negating at least one of the things that you're experiencing. By saying and allows both to be true simultaneously, even though they appear to be competing phenomena. Now, probably the most consistent podcast I listen to is Brene Brown, which she is just a hero of mine in her ability to not only research really complex human behaviors, but be able to synthesize her findings in really relatable ways, but also in just her ability to connect with amazing people. And recently she interviewed Barack Obama, who, of course, has his new book that recently came out. And one of the things that she mentioned in this interview with him that she observed in reading his book was something consistent with something she's been doing longitudinal research in around leadership. And it's the ability to hold paradox, which is to say, I can allow two truths to occur at the same time. Now, in her work as, understanding leadership, that makes for a good leader because it gives you the ability to hear multiple perspectives simultaneously and hold them to be truths, even when they're competing. And so I loved that she drew that connection in both her research and in the paradoxes in which Barack explains so much of his growing up and as his experience in his life. And it was the reminder that that is such a foundational piece for us being able to have equanimity in our lives, this ability to have this evenness of mind, this equanimity to not be pulled into categorizing positive or negative, yes or no, good or bad, that truly equanimity is the ability to hold paradox and to hold multiple truths at the same time. And why does this matter? Because we often are experiencing multiple truths at the same time. And how might we relate differently to our experiences if we allowed them to coexist without feeling the need to only hold on to one side of it? Now, that's not to say everything can hold equal ground, but be curious about which ones can. And I guess I should have replaced but there with and be curious. See, I'm catching it even as I'm talking. So ask yourself the question, can I accept two truths to be true at the same time? Now, if you are a parent, my guess is you experience this all the time with our children. I love you and I'm unhappy with the behavior you just exhibited. Perfect example. I want to be around you and I need a boundary for some personal space. Both can be true at the exact same time. Same thing if we're in partnership in our relationships, right? It's I love you and I'm really angry at you right now. And so when we can allow both truths to exist, we allow ourselves greater self-compassion for what feels like this internal competition inside of us, where we don't have to then land in just one of the camps. So as I think about it, there's actually a lot of roadblocks that we can have to accepting two truths. So I'm going to go through some of them. This is by no means a complete list, but hopefully it resonates with you in a way for you to be able to understand perhaps where you might get stuck in this dynamic yourself. So for some people, they have a really strong negativity bias, which is to say their mind focuses on what's wrong. And so perhaps one reason you might have a difficult time holding two truths to be possible is because you're just wanting to dwell in and focus on what's not going well. Dwelling in that negative perhaps serves you in some capacity. It might simply be an old habit. It might be your pattern of how you've seen the world, or maybe you were socialized or raised to focus on things. It could simply be your identity. Perhaps you're a bit more pessimistic, or maybe even a realist. And so it's harder to see multiple truths occurring at the same time, which might require a little bit more open-mindedness or maybe even optimism. It might just be an old story you're carrying, right? Maybe you're used to seeing things through a lens that doesn't apply anymore. And without awareness, you're going to continue to enact that old story as even new circumstances arise. And when we get stuck in our old stories, part of the challenge is that we don't know who we are without it. And so it's difficult to begin to see things in a new light when we don't know what our identity or our personality or our ways of behaving or our patterns of communication would look like if we were able to enact a more current version of ourselves. One of the other ways I like to ask this question of how is, staying stuck on the negative here, one of my favorite questions to ask is, how is that serving you? And, if I challenge a client to want to see multiple truths at the same time, and they are very much stuck on the negative, to be challenged with the question of, how is this serving you? Now, most often it's not. And the immediate answer is, well, it's not serving me at all, but I just don't know how else to do it. And so again, compassion for old habits, old patterns. Maybe it's, again, part of your mindset might be fixed towards growth and change. And so you don't even know that it's possible to adopt a new way of going through the world. Whenever I ask the question, how is it serving you? And I get the response, it's not. I love to follow up and continue to challenge, because that's what my clients are ultimately there paying for me to do, is help them to see their world through a new light. Something isn't working. So even if, staying stuck on the negative isn't serving you, there likely is a secondary benefit that you're gaining by staying stuck. Perhaps it's the secondary benefit simply of, I know how to do this. I may not like it, but it's familiar to me. It, keeps me connected to my family, or it keeps me connected to those around me because it keeps me aligned with their viewpoints. So there's a variety of reasons of why we stay stuck. But when you get to the point when recognizing that it's preventing you from moving forward in some capacity, well, then you can begin to have awareness of when those patterns arise and how to be able to push past them. So another roadblock that keeps us having a difficult time in holding two truths to be possible at the same time, I kind of mentioned it already, but if we have a fixed mindset, if our mindset is not open to see things in a new way, that would be an example of it being fixed, right? So you don't see the possibility around you. You see things very linearly or one-sided, whereas an open mindset might be more open to see things in a new way. Maybe perhaps another roadblock could be that you just can't hold the space for more than one truth. Maybe it's overwhelming to consider all the possibilities as to what's going on. Maybe it feels imbalanced to you, or maybe you can't contain multiple experiences at once. And, a simple example I will give is, I'm hungry and I'm tired. Okay, two truths at the same time. Are those competing? No, not necessarily. I can be tired without being hungry, and I can be hungry without being tired. But I might not know what to do first if I'm feeling both. Which one do I attend to? And so if you have a difficulty in holding space for more than one truth, even something as simple as that, it could be, I don't know what to do. Where do I take my next best step? Where do I turn to next? If both of these are true, which one do I attend to? And that in and of itself can become a roadblock. Again, super, super simple example. And yet we get stuck. Okay, another way that we can have a roadblock against identifying or being able to see two truths at the same time is sometimes our physiology feels the same for competing experiences. And so we don't know how to differentiate exactly what it is that's going on inside of us. So one of my favorite examples for this is that physiologically, fear and excitement feel the same way in the body. And so it takes a great level of self-awareness and even context clues in some capacity, takes a great level of awareness to differentiate, what am I actually feeling? Because in both fear and excitement, you might get an elevation of heart rate, you might get a little tightness in the chest, you might feel your blood starting to move throughout the body, or even that kind of tingly sensation. You might feel the mind start to ramp up. And so in absence of self-awareness of what's going on inside of you, you might be quick to label it one thing and then negating any other possibility from being true. I hope that's clear. But again, we can get really quick to label our experience based on the past without being open to seeing more clearly what's actually happening in the present moment. A fifth roadblock that I often see occurring is what is negating us from accepting more than one truth, is that our inner voice, which is also often our inner critic, is not super kind to us and can be loud and judgmental and can be harsh and cannot be a supportive voice inside our mind. And so if part of the paradox you're trying to hold is anything having to do with self-compassion, where you're wanting to give yourself some credit for what you're experiencing, your inner critic might have a difficult time in allowing that space to emerge. And this is something I see with a lot of my clients. And the experience that I give to that of what that looks like in practice is that voice that pops up pretty quickly that says, yeah, but I can't do that. Or yeah, but that's not my truth. Yeah, but I wasn't raised that way. Yeah, but I don't know how to do that. Yeah, but my partner wouldn't support me. Yeah, but that goes against my story of who I believe myself to be. Whatever it is, anytime there's a yeah, but emerging in your mind, that's the inner voice negating your acceptance of what's actually arising. Now, if your inner voice had a kinder and gentler tone and was able to say words such as yes, and automatically that is allowing for the multiple truths to exist, allowing that paradox to be present without judgment. So there might be different ways that this looks like in practice for you, but can I hold the space for I'm growing in being able to shift some habits and patterns of mine, and I'm fearful it's not going to last. That's holding two truths to be possible. Can I hold space for the fact that I'm not certain I'm committed to this relationship, and I need to keep working on myself, because if I don't work on myself, I'm not going to know how to determine the relationship. Two truths seem competing, but they're existing at the same time. If your inner critic was loud, it might tell you that working on yourself was wrong and you just have to commit to the relationship, or vice versa. Think of times when your inner critic is coming out in judgment, telling you that what you're doing is wrong, telling you that you should be doing things a different way, that you should be behaving in a way that you want to be, but it's hard to get there. How might your experience be able to turn down the volume on your inner critic, turn up the volume on your inner compassionate self, if you were able to say, yes, both are true right now at the exact same time? I am wanting to commit to this relationship, and I know I'm also needing to commit to figuring myself out and doing my personal growth. And they can exist simultaneously. They might not have equal value. And that's, one of the tricky things. We're not putting equal weight on this multiple truth. We're simply allowing them to coexist, because like sometimes in couples work, we're wanting one to be, there to only be one truth. I'm 100% committed to the relationship. Well, if you only believe in the one truth, that negates the part of, yeah, but I need to do the work on myself to make sure I know myself well enough to even see if I can commit to this long term. I know it kind of can get nuanced in how it looks in practice, but it's why I'm trying to say this in multiple ways so you can be able to hear something that might resonate within yourself. So now that we've named some of the roadblocks, right? Those roadblocks being you have a pattern of staying on the negative, that you have a fixed mindset, that you don't know how to hold space for more than one truth. Maybe it's hard to differentiate what's actually arising, so you might not recognize them being as two separate truths, or that you have a loud inner critic. So now that we've addressed some of the roadblocks to holding paradox, I want to now talk about some of the ways that we can push past those roadblocks, some of the ways in which we can allow ourselves to hold two truths at once. Now, right off the bat, for starters, even if you're not a personal client of mine, which the majority of you listening are not, I will hold the space for you, because I tell this to my clients. So I am going to hold the space for you that I can accept these multiple truths about yourself, even if you're not there yet. So I'm hopeful that even me believing in you to hold these multiple truths as a possibility can exist in your life, even if you don't quite believe it. Because that's part of it, is can someone believe in me to be able to see this change being able to occur? And that's what I'm here for. That's what the journey forward is all about. Okay, so ways to hold two truths. Simply a mindset shift. Can I believe that there are more than one truth at the exact same time? Can I hold it to be possible, that it is possible for me to experience that? Because that's the mindset shift, right? If your mindset is fixed, it's never going to be able to take you there. So one of the ways to push past that is to choose to have a more open mindset. Now, I never have been a fan of the idea fake it till you make it. I think it's inauthentic. I think it's forcing things. I don't think it actually works to create long-term positive change. However, there are ways we can take baby steps towards building ourselves closer to where we want to be. And part of it, if we go back to that inner voice inside of our mind, and now I'm no longer going to call it your inner critic, because it's just an inner voice. It's a habit for it to be an inner critic. But what would happen if you were to shift the voice inside of your mind to be a voice that you would use if you were talking to someone you deeply cared about? If you were talking to a small child, or even perhaps if you imagined the voice inside your mind to be talking to yourself as a young child, how might you allow to say things that you may not fully believe yet, but you would still provide in comfort? Now, this is where it gets put into practice with this. Have you ever had the experience with someone who was really struggling? And, whatever was going on in their life, there was some suffering, there was pain, there was a not knowing how long it was going to last. There was insecurity about the future. And if you were to show up as a comforting friend, a comforting loved one, my guess is something you might say to someone who is struggling would be the words, "It's gonna be okay." Now, you can say that not 100% knowing it's gonna be okay, but you can believe it's gonna be okay. And if you share that belief with someone who's struggling, it's going to be okay, it likely is going to bring comfort to the other person. Now, you don't know it to be true. So here we have a paradox. I don't know it to be true, and I believe it to be true. It's my choice to believe everything is going to be okay, even if I don't know it as a fact. That right there is holding two truths possible at the same time. Now, someone who's really stuck in a negative place or even a fixed negative mindset is going to get very stuck on the idea of, no, it's not going to be okay. Well, now we can go deeper with this. If it's not going to be okay, then how can we begin to shift how we see things that are arising? Because we know as fundamental practices in Buddhism that not only does suffering exist, but that old age, death, and disease are part of human experience. So if we all know that death is going to happen and is inevitable, in short of death, and therefore at some point old age and or disease, everything ultimately will be okay. Now, a lot of our interpretation of it not being okay is the mindset of, I didn't want it to turn out this way. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. And so now we're going deeper into foundations of Buddhism and mindfulness, of being able to have non-attachment and understand that expectations are the quickest path to suffering. So one of the ways I've liked to reframe for many of my clients the year 2020 is because for so many people, it's been interpreted that this has been a shit show. Now that we're in 2021, things haven't really changed all that much yet. It will take time for those, the tides to turn, to rotate the ship, so to speak. But I like to hold the perspective, what if everything that happened in 2020 was the way it was supposed to happen? What if this is the way it was supposed to be? And we're only stuck because it's not what we wanted it to be. So even though things don't look the way that we thought they would, even if things are not maybe where we hoped they would be at this point, if we can hold the truth that things are going to be okay, even when I don't know what that looks like, even then it's different than what I expected, even when I don't know when that's going to occur, but I know in my heart, as long as I'm breathing, there's more right with me than wrong with me. Doesn't mean I have to like it, doesn't mean it has to always feel good. But fundamentally, when I say it's going to be okay, it means as long as you're breathing, you're already getting through it. You have a 100% success rate of getting through the things you didn't think you could. There's confidence that every morning the sun will rise, every day the sun will set. And so we can hold with the rhythm of nature that the cycle of the seasons will continue. And the more not okay I am is because I'm resisting change. I'm resisting what's happening, which leads me to one of the ways we can accept multiple truths is through the mindfulness practice of accepting what's arising, even if you don't like it. So if someone were to say to you, this really sucks right now, and you're going to be okay, right? Two truths, both are occurring at the same time. Both are true. This sucks, and you're going to be okay. Part of the challenge that you might be having with accepting the two truths is the inner voice inside of you saying, but I don't feel okay. So now we'll take it one step further. Can you not feel okay and be okay with that? Is it okay to not be okay? Two truths. So you see, this can kind of get to be complex, and yet it's still really quite simple. So one of the ways we can continue to get unstuck from resisting to truth is to see your patterns more clearly without judgment. Just notice when you're saying but and you're denying or resisting or negating part of your experience to be true. And where can you truly enter into more compassion for yourself when multiple truths exist simultaneously? And can you begin to be open to the idea that it's going to be okay, even if you don't feel okay? Because when you learn to create greater awareness of your patterns, of the ways in which you talk to yourself in your own mind, and to see the ways in which your inner voice is not serving you, it's keeping you stuck, it's keeping you focused on the negative, it's keeping you stuck in judgment or comparison, or it's keeping you held in the past, and it's preventing you from being present and aware of what's arising now, allowing the future to unfold as it's unfolding without attachment or expectation to how that's supposed to look, the greater ability you have to roll with whatever is arising. And ultimately, when we can come back to a practice of compassion and presence and awareness, we have a much easier time to accept whatever it is that's arising. So there are many, many benefits to holding paradox. I think it's fundamentally because our world is full of paradox. I'm insecure and I'm confident. Both are true at the same time. I'm financially fearful, and yet I have financial success. I am, secure in my relationship, and at times I am doubtful about it. I am confident in my parenting, and I also don't know what I'm doing. I'm hungry and I'm tired. I love you and I'm mad at you. I'm grateful and I'm angry. I'm present and I'm distracted in my mind. Like, there are so many times when we experience multiple truths. And as long as we say the word but, we're negating the other part of our experience from existing. Does not mean it holds equal weight. And when we can allow ourselves this permission, we are allowing a richer, more fuller experience of our life to be present. I'm getting through it and it's hard. Two truths. If you say but, you're negating the first part. I'm getting through it, but it's really hard. Do you hear the difference there? I'm getting through it, but it's really hard negates the I'm getting through it part. I'm getting through it and it's still hard. It has a different feel to it. It's owning both sides without negating one of them. So I hope that you found this episode helpful. I would love to hear any feedback. You can always email me. You can join in the Facebook group and join in conversation around what's, these topics, ways to bring more awareness, compassion, mindfulness, and acceptance into your life. But this is the implication. This is putting it into practice. And this is why I love these tools so much. And I just want to finish by saying, one more piece of this, and an area that I see this showing up a lot for people is, I've talked about the importance of being values driven. We've talked about this in a couple of different times and episodes. If you haven't, check out the previous episodes on values. And I know I've mentioned it before, but I think it's worth mentioning in this context that oftentimes we even have competing values in the moment. I have a value of self-care, and I also have a value of productivity. And so sometimes those are going to be competing. And when I can allow them to exist simultaneously, I can begin to make more discerning choices in how I choose to organize my day. If I only focus on the value of productivity, I'm negating my value of self-care. So, I like to also consider the values in there because our values can coexist and they can sometimes compete. And, maybe it flip-flops on which ones are going to take precedent, but when we can allow them to both be present, we can allow ourselves greater compassion, greater ability to slow down, to be discerning and what to do in the next moment. Because I think so much of when we get stuck is when we don't know how to take our next step forward, which is why I love mindfulness so much, because it often is giving us our next moment step of what do I do? Well, first, slow down, breathe, be aware, be compassionate, get out of your head, get present in your body. So, like I said, I hope that you found this episode helpful. It has been a theme that has been coming up over and over and over and over again with my clients. So I wanted to come on here and talk about it as a topic that I find great value in. And that is multiple truths can exist at once. And when I can hold that to be true, I give myself much greater permission to fully embrace whatever experience is arising for me in the moment. So thanks so much for tuning in. If this episode spoke to you, if there's something you'd like to share, please leave a rating, a review. I thank you in advance for being part of the Journey Forward community. It really does mean so much to me. And take care and be well. See you next time.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.